retwisted 100%. Matter of fact, before I even think about retwisting my own hair, I'm gonna text my lady, the electrician, because this is nuts. This is something else. Going out for breakfast. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Cimonealise. You can call me Cece. I do live streams on beauty, self-care, and more daily. And lately, I've been really feeling reading. So we finished our first book yesterday here, The Four Agreements, and now we're like touching on a children's book, one of my favorite ones when I was a kid, and we're also like reading a little bit of a novel this morning that we did yesterday. So the book that we're going to read this morning is chapter 2 of Because of Winn-Dixie. Super cute. And then we're going to jump back into some adult reading of 100 Years of Solitude. We're just a few pages in, so we're just going to read a couple pages a day until we're done with this one. Okay, cool business. Are you ready? Oh, these are sexy. And I'm sitting on my massage chair. My goal is to get through as many of these books as I can. I read my books, but sometimes it's just like, I don't have the time, but then I have the time because I'm doing it with you guys, but it makes it fun for me. I want reading to be fun. And I'm reading my books out loud, and I feel like that gives me like an audience to a degree, right? You ready? Let's get into some reading. We're going to chapter 2 of Because of Winn-Dixie. That summer I found Winn-Dixie was also the summer me and the preacher moved to Naomi, Florida. He could be the new preacher at the Open Arms Baptist Church of Naomi. My daddy is a good preacher and a nice man, but sometimes it's hard for me to think about him as my daddy because he spends so much time preaching or thinking about preaching or getting ready to preach, and so my mind I think of him as the preacher. Before I was born, he was a missionary in India, and that is how I got my first name. But he calls me by my second name, Opal, because that's what his mother's name is. And he loved her a lot. Anyway, while me and Winn-Dixie walked home, I told him how I got my name, and I told him how I just moved to Naomi. I also told him about the preacher and how he was a good man, even if he was too distracted with sermons and prayers and suffering people to go grocery shopping. But you know what? I told Winn-Dixie, you're a suffering dog, so maybe he'll take you right away. Maybe he'll let me keep you. Winn-Dixie looked up at me and wagged his tail. He was kind of limping, like something was wrong with one of his legs. And I have to admit, he stunk bad. He was an ugly dog, but already I loved him with all my heart. When we got to the Friendly Corners trailer park, I told Winn-Dixie that he had to behave right and be quiet because this was an all-adult trailer park, and the only reason I got to live in it was because the preacher was a preacher and I was a good, quiet kid. I was what the Friendly Corners trailer manager, Mr. Alford, called an exception. And I told Winn-Dixie he had to act like an exception too. Specifically, I told him not to pick any fights with Mr. Alfred's cats or Mrs. Deepwiller's little yappy Yorkie dog. Samuel Winn-Dixie looked at me while I was telling him everything, and I swear he understood. Sit, I told him when we got to my trailer. He sat right down. He got and he had good manners. Stay here, I told him. I'll be right back. The preacher was sitting in the living room, working at the little fold-out table. He had paper spread all around him, and he was rubbing his nose, which always means he is thinking hard. Daddy, I said. He said back. Daddy, do you know how you always tell me that we should help those less fortunate than others? He said. He rubbed his nose and looked around at his papers. Well, I said, I found a less fortunate at the grocery store. Is that right? He said. Yes, sir, I told him. I stared at the preacher really hard. Sometimes he reminded me of a turtle hiding inside its shell and there thinking about things and not ever sticking his head out into the world. Daddy, I was wondering, could this less fortunate, could he stay with us for a while? Finally, the preacher looked up at me. Opal, he said. What are you talking about? I found a dog, I told him, and I want to keep him. No dogs, the preacher said. We talked about this before. You don't need a dog. I know it, I said. I know I don't need a dog, but this dog needs me. Look, I said, went to the trailer door and I hollered, Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie's ears shot up in the air and he grinned and sneezed, and then he came limping up the steps into the trailer and put his head right in the preacher's lap, right on top of the pile of papers. The preacher looked down at Winn-Dixie. He looked at his ribs and his matted up fur and the places where he was bald. The preacher's nose wrinkled up. Like I said, the dog smelled pretty bad. When Dixie looked up at the preacher, he pulled back his lips and showed the preacher all of his crooked yellow teeth, and wagged his tail and knocked some of the preacher's papers off the table. Then he sneezed. Some more papers fluttered to the floor. What did you call this dog? The preacher asked. Winn-Dixie, I whispered. I was afraid to say anything too loud. I could see that Winn-Dixie was having a good effect on the preacher. He was making him poke his head out of his shell. Well, said the preacher, he's a stray, if I ever seen one. He put down his pencil and scratched Winn-Dixie behind the ears. And a less fortunate, too, that's for sure. Are you looking for a home? The preacher asked, real soft to Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie wagged his tail. Well, the preacher said, I guess you found one. Okay, that was chapter 2. We're on to the next one. Hello, good morning. All right, we just finished chapter 2, and because I'm Winn-Dixie, now we're gonna get back to 100 Years of Solitude, the winner of the Nobel Prize by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So, doing my best here. After this, I'm going to the gym. I hope everyone's having a good morning. If you're new here, my name's Cimonealise. You can call me Cece. C-I-C-I, capital C's on me, please, and thank you when you spell my name. I'm reading this morning for self-care and wellness. I do live streams daily on beauty, self-care, and more. I'm a licensed massage therapist, mommy, and more. And I just enjoy pampering people, but I also love to take care of myself. And reading is something I used to enjoy doing. I finally got me some reading glasses, and I'm just reading a little bit out of a little bit. And reading's been like really nice for me lately. It's been a nice breakup from like just scrolling on my phone. But I feel like a lot of people don't read anymore too. So I hear a lot of people like my voice. So I'm gonna use it for good. We're gonna read together. Yeah, okay. So we're on page 4 of 100 Years of Solitude. These is a tiny print book. So we're only gonna read pages, not chapters. So it's gonna take us a while to get through this one. That's why we got variety. But all right, let's dive in. Finally tired of waiting, he bemoaned to Melquiades the failure of his project, and the gypsy then gave him convincing proof of his honesty. He gave him back the doubloons in exchange for the magnifying glass. He left him in addition some Portuguese maps and several instruments of investigation. In his own handwriting, he sat down a concise synthesis of the studies of Monk Herman, which he left Jose Arcadio so that he would be able to make use of the astrolabe. The compass and the sextant, Jose Arcadio Bonita spent the long months of the rainy season shut up in a small room that he had built in the rear of the house, so that no one would disturb his experiments. Having completely abandoned his domestic obligations, he spent entire nights in the courtyard watching the course of the stars. He almost contracted sunstroke from trying to establish an exact method to ascertain noon. When he became an expert in the use of manipulation of instruments, he convinced a notion of space that allowed him to navigate across unknown seas, to visit uninhabited territories, and to establish relations with splendid beings without having to leave his study. That was the period in which he acquired the habit of talking to himself, of walking through the house without paying attention to anyone. As Ursula and the children broke their backs in the garden, growing banana, caladium, cassava, and yams, ayuma roots, and eggplants. Suddenly, without warning, his feverish activity was interrupted, and he was replaced by a kind of fascination. He spent several days as if he were bewitched, softly repeating to himself a string of fearful conjectures without giving credit to his own understanding. Finally, one Tuesday in December at lunchtime, all at once, he released the whole weight of his torment. The children would remember for the rest of their lives the August solemnity with which their father, devastated by his prolonged vigil and by the wrath of his imagination, revealed his discovery to him. The earth is round, like an orange. Ursula lost her patience. "If you have to go crazy, please go crazy all by yourself," she shouted. "But don't try to put your gypsy ideas into the heads of the children." Jose Arcadio Bonita, impassive, did not let himself be frightened by the desperation of his wife, who, in a seizure of rage, smashed the astrolabe against the floor. He built another one. He gathered the men of the village in his little room, and he demonstrated to them the theories that none of them could understand, the possibility of returning to where one had set out by consistently sailing east. The whole village was convinced that Jose Arcadio Bonita had lost his reason. When Malquitas returned to set things straight, he gave public praise to the intelligence of a man who, from pure astronomical speculation, had evolved a theory that Macondo until then had proved a theory that had already been proved in practice. Although unknown in Macondo until then, and as proof of his admiration, he made a gift that was to have profound influence on the future of the village, the laboratory of an alchemist. By then, Malquitas had aged with surprising rapidity. On his fast trips, he seemed to be the same age as Jose Arcadio Bonita, but while later had preserved his extraordinary strength, which permitted him to pull down a horse by grabbing its ears. The gypsy, in reality, the result of multiple and rare diseases contracted on his innumerable trips around the world, according to what he himself said, as he spoke to Jose Arcadio Bonita. While helping him set up the laboratory, death followed him everywhere, sniffing at the cuffs of his pants, but never deciding to give him the final clutch of its claws. He was a fugitive from all the plagues and catastrophes that had ever lashed mankind. He had survived pellagra in Persia, scurvy in Malayan archipelago, leprosy in Alexandria, beriberi in Japan, bubonic plague in Madagascar, and an earthquake in Sicily, a disastrous shipwreck in the Strait of Magellan. The prodigious creature said to possess the keys of the Nostradamus was a gloomy man enveloped in a sad aura with an Asiatic look that seemed to know what there was on the other side of things. He wore a large black hat that looked like a raven, with widespread wings and a velvet vest across which the patina of the centuries had skated. But in spite of his immense wisdom and his mysterious breadth, he had human burden and an earthly condition that kept him involved in small problems of daily life. He would complain of ailments of old age. He suffered from most insignificant economic difficulties. And he had stopped laughing at one time a long time ago, back because scurvy had made his teeth drop out. On that suffocating noontime when the gypsy revealed his secrets, Jose Arcadio Bonita had certainty that it was the beginning of a great friendship. The children were startled by his fantastic stories. Aureliano, who could not have been more than 5 at the time, would remember him for the rest of his life. As he saw him that afternoon sitting against the metallic and quivering light from the window, lighting up from his deep organ temples There flowered the grease that was being melted by the heat. Jose Acardia, his older brother, would pass the wonderful image as hereditary memory to all of his descendants. Ursula, on the other hand, had bad memory of that visit. She had entered the room just as Malquitas and carefully broken a flask of bichloride of mercury. It smells of the devil, she said. Not at all, Malquitas corrected her. It has been proven that the devil has a sulfuric properties, and this is just a little corrosive sublimate. Always didactic, he went into a learned exposition of diabolical properties of a cinnabar, but Ursula paid no attention to him. Although she took the children off to pray, the biting odor would stay forever in her mind, linked to the memory of Malquitas. The rudimentary laboratory, in addition to the profusion of pots, funnels, retorts, filters, and sieves, sieves, was made up of a primitive water pipe, a glass beaker with a long thin neck, a reproduction of the philosopher's egg, and a still, hold on. Hey Siri, what word is sieves? No, thank you. Okay, a sieve. That's what I'm gonna start doing from now on. I'm gonna look it up because I'm gonna figure this out. It's okay. The rudimentary laboratory, in addition to the profusion of pots, funnels, retorts, filters, and sieves, was made up of primitive water pipe, a glass beaker with a long thin neck, a reproduction of philosopher's egg, and still, the gypsies themselves had built, in accordance with the modern descriptions, a three-armed umbilic of Mary the Jew. Along with those items, Malquitas left samples of the 7 metals that corresponded to the 7 planets of the formulas of Moses and Zosmice for doubling the quantity of gold. Instead of the notes and sketches concerning the process of the great teaching that would permit those who could interpret them to undertake the manufacture of the philosopher's stone. Seduced by the simplicity of the formulas to double the quantity of gold, Jose Acordia Bonita paid court to Ursula for several weeks so that she would let him dig up her current colonial coins and increase them by as many times as it would be possible to subdivide mercury. Ursula gave in, and always to her husband's unyielding Hey Siri, what word is obstinacy? Obstinacy. Refusal to change one's opinion. Obstinacy. Okay. Then obstinacy. Okay. And then Jose Acardia Bonita threw three doubloons into a pan and fused them into copper fillings, orpiment, brimmet, stone, and lead. He put it all to a boil in a pot of casserole until it got thick and pestilential syrup, which was more like common caramel than valuable gold. In risky and desperate process of distillation, melted with 7 planetary metals mixed with hermetic mercury and vitriol of ciphers and put back into the to cook in hog fat for lack of any radish oil, Ursula's precious inheritance was reduced to a large piece of burnt hog cracklings that was firmly stuck to the bottom of a pot. Oh my heart. Oh my heart. This man just keeps playing with this woman's resources. That is crazy. When the gypsies came back, Ursula had turned the whole population of the village against them. But curiosity was greater than fear for that time. The gypsies went about the town making deafening noise with all the manner of the musical instruments, while a hawker announced the exhibition of the most fabulous discovery of the nascent. What word is this? Nascent. Hey Siri, What word is Naciancenes? She can't even say it. She had to go to web results. Anyways, y'all know the word. So that everyone went to the tent, and then by paying 1 cent, they saw a youthful Mequinez recovered, unwrinkled, with a new and flashing set of teeth. These who remembered his gums that had been destroyed by scurvy, his flaccid cheeks and his weathered lips trembled with fear, and the final proof of the gypsy's supernatural power. The fear turned into panic when Malquitas took out his teeth, intact encased in their gums, and showed them to the audience for an instant, a fleeting instant which it went back into being the same decrepit man of years past, but put them back again, and smiled once more with the full control of his restored youth. Even Jose Acordo Benito himself considered Mequinez's knowledge had reached unbearable extremes, but he felt a healthy excitement when the gypsies explained to him alone the workings of his false teeth. It seemed so simple and so prodigious. At that same time, overnight, he lost all interest and experiments in alchemy. He underwent a new crisis of bad humor. He did not go back to eating regularly. He would spend the day walking through the house. Incredible things are happening in the world, he said to Ursula. Right there across the river, there are all kinds of magical instruments. While he kept on living like donkeys, those who had known him since the foundation of Macondo were startled at how much he had changed under Macoto's influence. At first, Jose Acordio Bonita had been a kind of youthful patriarch who would give instructions for planting and advice for raising of children and animals, and who collaborated with everyone, even in the physical work of the welfare of the community, since his house from the very first had been the best in the village. The others had been built in its image and likeness. He had a small, well-lighted living room and a dining room in the shape of a terrace with galley-colored flowers, 2 bedrooms, a courtyard with a gigantic chestnut tree, a well-kept garden, and a corral where goats and pigs and hens lived in peaceful communion. The only animals that were prohibited, not just in his house but in the entire settlement, were fighting cocks. Ursula's capacity for work was the same as that of her husband. Active, small, severe, the woman of unbreakable nerves, who at no moment in her life had been heard to sing, seemed to be everywhere, from dawn until quite late at night, always pursued by the soft whispers of her stiff starched petticoats. Thanks to her, the floors of tamped earth and unwhitewashed mud walls, the rustic wooden furniture they had built themselves, were always clean, and the old chests where they kept their clothes exhaled the warm smell of basil. Jose Acordio Bonita, who was the most enterprising man ever to be seen in the village, had set up the placement of the house in such a way that from all of them one could reach the river and draw water from the same effort, and he lined up the streets with such good sense that no house got more sun than another during the hot time of day. Within a few years, Macondo was a village that was more orderly and hardworking than any known until about its 300 inhabitants. It was a truly happy village where no one was over 30 years of age and where no one had died. Since the time of its founding, Jose Acordio Benita had built traps and cages. In a short time, he filled not only his own house, but all those in the village with tropellas, canaries, bee-eaters, and all those in the village redbreast. The concert of so many different birds became so disturbing that Ursula would plug her ears with beeswax so as not to lose her sense of reality. First time the Malquitos tribe arrived selling glass balls of the headaches, everyone was surprised that they had been able to find that village lost in the drowsiness of the swamp, and the gypsies confessed that they had found their way by the song of the birds. The spirit of social initiative disappeared in a short time. Pulled away by the fever of the magnets, the astronomical calculations, the dreams of transmutation, the urge to discover the wonders of the world, from clean and active man, Jose Acordio Bonita changed into a man lazy in appearance, careless in his dress, with a wild beard that Ursula managed to trim with great effort, and a kitchen knife. With a kitchen knife, there were many who considered him the victim of some strange spell, but even those most convinced of his madness left work and family to follow him when he brought out his tools to clear the land and asked the assembled group to open a way that would put Macondo in contact with great inventions. Jose Acardio Bonita was completely ignorant of the geography of the region. He knew that to the east there lay an impenetrable mountain chain, that on the other side of the mountains there was an ancient city of Rio Jaca, where in times past, according to what he said, had been told by the first Aureliano Bonita, his grandfather, Sir Francis Drake, had gone crocodile hunting with cannons, and that he repaired them and stuffed them with straw to bring to Queen Elizabeth. In his youth, Jose Acardio Bonita and his men, with wives and children, animals, and all kinds of domestic implements, had crossed the mountains in search. After I'm done, we're gonna go to the gym and get breakfast first, and then go to the gym. And then, good morning, everyone. My daughter was just chatting with me. Ooh. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Where did we log that? There was even... In his youth, Jose Acardio Bonita and his mess of men, wives, and children, animals, and all kinds of domestic implements had crossed the mountains in search of an outlet to the sea. After 26 months, they gave up the expedition and founded Macondo, so they would not have to go back. It was therefore a route that did not interest him, for it could lead only to the past. The south way, the swamps covered with an eternal vegetable scum, and the whole vast universe of the Great Swamp, which, according to what the gypsy said, had no limits. The Great Swamp in the west mingled with the boundless extension of water, where there are women causing the ruination of sailors, with the charm of the extraordinary breast. The gypsies sailed along the route for 6 months before they reached the strip of land where the mules that carried the mail passed. According to Jose Acardio Bonita's calculations, the only possibility of contact with civilization lay along the northern route, so he handed out clearing tools and hunting weapons to the same men who had been with him during the founding of Macondo. He threw his directional instruments and his maps into a knapsack, and he undertook the reckless adventure. You're not on the... Huh? You making sure you're not on it? Well, you need to get dressed. You need to get some clothes or anything. No, it's all right there. You came all the way over here. Jim, for me to tie a balloon. If you don't, stay on that side and go grab some clothes. Right here. These are all clean.
My own?
Let's throw some shorts on first, so you can stop walking around the house with just undies. Thank you. My daughter. Love you, babes. Active, small, severe, that woman of unbreakable nerves, what a nerves who at no moment in her life had been heard to sing, seemed to be everywhere. From dawn until quite late at night, always pursued by the soft whisper of her stiff starched petticoats. Thanks to her, the floors of tampered earth and the unwhitewashed mud walls, the rustic wood furniture, and they had built themselves were always clean, and the old chests where they kept their clothes excels more. Oh wait, hold on. Kitchen knife. During the first days, they did not come across the appreciable obstacle. They went down along the stony bank. We're on page 11 of this book. Okay. Page 11 of 100 Years of Solitude. During the first days, they did not come across any appreciable obstacle. They went down along the stony bank of the river to a place where years before they had found the soldiers' armor, and from there they went into the woods along a path between wild orange trees. At the end of the first week, they killed and roasted a deer, but they agreed to eat only half of it and salt the rest for the days they lay ahead. With the precaution, they tried to postpone the necessity of having to eat macaws, whose blue flesh had a harsh and musky taste. Then, for more than 10 days, they did not see the sun again. The ground became soft and damp like volcanic ash, and the vegetation was thicker and thicker, and the cries of the birds and the uproar of the monkeys became more and more remote, and the world became eternally sad. The men on the expedition felt overwhelmed by their most ancient memories, and that paradise dampens the silence, going back to before original sin. As their boots sank into the pools of steaming oil, and their machetes destroyed bloody lilies and the golden salamanders, for a week almost without speaking, they went ahead like sleepwalkers through a universe of grief. Lungs were overwhelmed by suffocating smell of blood. They could not return because the strip that they were opening at as they went seemed to grow before their eyes. It is all right, Jose Cardio Bonita would say. The main thing is not to lose our bearings, the invisible north, so they would be able to get out of that enchanted region. It was thick night, starless, but the darkness was becoming impregnated with the fresh and the clear air. Exhausted by the long crossing, they hung up their hammocks and slept deeply for the first time in 2 weeks. When they woke up with the sun already high in the sky, they were speechless with fascination. Before them, surrounded by ferns and palm trees, white and powdery in the silent morning light, was an enormous Spanish galleon. Tilted slightly to the starboard, it had hanging from intact mast the dirty rags of its sails. In the midst of its rigging, which was adorned with orchids, the hull covered with an armor of petrified barnacles and soft moss was firmly fastened into a surface of stones. The whole structure seemed to occupy its own space, one of solitude and oblivion, protected from the vices of time and the habits of the birds. Inside, where the expeditioners explored with careful intent, there was nothing but a thick forest of flowers. The discovery of the galleon, an indication of the proximity of sea, broke Jose Cordio Benito's drive. He considered it a trick of his whimsical fate to have searched for the sea without finding it, at the cost of countless sacrifices and suffering, to have found it at all of a sudden without looking for it, as if it lay across the path like an insurmountable object. Many years later, Colonel Aureliano Bonita crossed the region again, when it was already regular mail route, and the only part of the ship he found was its burned-out frame in the midst of a field of poppies. Only then, convinced that the story had been some product of his father's imagination, did he wonder how the galleon had been able to get inland to that spot. But Jose Cordio Benita did not concern himself with that. When he found the sea after another 4 days' journey from Galleon, his dreams ended as he faced the ashen, foamy, dirty sea, which had not marinated the risk of sacrifices of the adventure. God damn it, he shouted. Macondo is surrounded by water on all sides. The idea of peninsular Macondo prevailed for a long time. Inspired by the arbitrary map that Jose Arcadio Benito sketched on his return from the expedition, he drew it in rage, evilly exaggerating the difficulties of communication, as if to punish himself for the absolute lack of sense with which he had chosen the place will never get anywhere. He laminated to Ursula, "We're going to rot our lives away here without receiving the benefits of science." That certainty mulled over several months in the small room he used as his laboratory, brought him to the conception of the plan to move Macondo to a better place. By that time, Ursula had anticipated his feverish designs. With the secret of implacable labor of a small ant, she predisposed the women of the village against the flightness of their husbands, who were already preparing for the move. Jose Cuerno Pineda did not know at what moment or because of what adverse forces his plan had been become enveloped in a web of pretexts, disappointments, and evasions until it turned into nothing but an illusion. Ursula watched him with innocent intention and even felt some pity for him. On the morning when she found him in the back room muttering about his plans for moving as he placed his laboratory pieces in the original boxes, she let him finish. She let him nail up the boxes and put his initials on them with an ink brush, without reproaching him, but knowing that he knew, because she had heard him say in his soft monologues that the men of the village would not back him up in his undertaking. Only when he began to take down the door of the room did Ursula dare ask him what was he doing, what he was doing, and he answered with certain bitterness, "Since no one wants to leave, we'll leave all by ourselves." Ursula did not become upset. "We will not leave," she said. "We will stay here because we have a son here. We still have a death. We still not had a death," he said. "A person does not belong to a place until there is someone dead under the ground." Ursula replied with a soft firmness, "If I have to die for the rest of you to stay here, I will die." Jose Ricardo Benita had not thought that his wife's will was so firm. He tried to seduce her with the charm of his fantasy, with the promise of prodigious world where all one had to do was sprinkle some magic liquid on the ground and plants would bear fruit whenever a man wished, where all the manner of instruments against pain were sold at a bargain prices. But Ursula was insensible to his clairvoyance. "Instead of going around thinking about your crazy inventions, you should be worrying about your sons," she replied. "Look at the state they're in, running wild, just like donkeys." Jose Eduardo Benito took his wife's words literally. He looked out the window and saw the barefoot children in the sunny garden, out the window and saw the barefoot children in the sunny garden. He had an impression that only at this instant had they begun to exist. Conceived by Ursula's spell sometimes occurred inside of him then. Something mysterious had definitive that uprooted him from his own time and carried him adrift through an unexplored region of his memory, while Ursula continued sweeping the house, which was safe now from being abandoned from the rest of her life. He stood there with an absorbed look, contemplating the children, until his eyes became moist and dried them with the back of his hand, exhaling a deep sigh of resignation. "All right," he said. "Tell them to come help me take these things out of the boxes." Jose Cordio, the older children, was 14. He had a square head, thick hair, and his father's character. Although he had the same impulse for growth and physical strength, it was early and evident that he lacked imagination. He had been convinced and born during the difficult crossing of the mountains before the founding of Macondo, and his parents gave thanks to heaven, and they saw he had no minimal animal features. Aureliano, the first human being to be born in Macondo, would be 6 years old in March. He was silent and withdrawn. He had wept in his mother's womb and been born with his eyes open. As they were cutting the umbilical cord, he moved his head from side to side, taking in the room and examining faces and people with fearless curiosity. Indifferent to those who came close to look at him, he kept his attention concentrated on the palm roof, which looked as if it were about to collapse under the tremendous pressure of the rain. Ursula did not remember the intensity of that look again until one day when little Aureliano, at the age of 3, went into the kitchen at the moment she was taking a pot of boiling soup from the stove and putting it on the table. The child, perplexed, said from the doorway, "It's going to spill." The pot was firmly placed on the center of the table, but just as soon as the child made the announcement, it began to unmistakable movement toward the edge, as if impelled by some inner dynamism. It fell and broke on the floor. Ursula, alarmed, told her husband about the episode, but he interpreted it as a natural phenomenon. That was the way he always was, alien to the existence of his sons, partly because he considered childhood as a period of mental insufficiency, and partly because he was always too absorbed in his fantastic speculations. But since the afternoon When he called the children in to help him unpack things in the laboratory, he gave them his best hours. In the small separate room where the walls were gradually being covered by strange maps and fabulous drawings, he taught them to read and write and do sums, and he spoke to them about the wonders of the world. Not only where his learning had extended, but forcing the limits of his imagination to extremes. It was in that way the boys ended up learning that in the southern extremes of Africa there were men so intelligent and peaceful that their only pastime was to sit and think, and that it was possible to cross the Aegean Sea on foot by jumping from island to island all the way to the port of Salonika. Those hallucinating sessions remained printed on the memories of the boys in such a way that many years later, a second before the regular army officer gave the firing squad the command to fire Colonel Ariano Bonito, saw once more that warm March afternoon on which his father had interpreted the lesson in physics and stood fascinated with his hand in the air and his eyes motionless, listening to the distant pipes, drums, and jingles of the gypsies who were coming to the village once more, announcing the latest and most startling discovery of the sages of Memphis. They were new gypsies, young men and women who knew only their own language, handsome specimens with oily skins and intelligent hands whose dances and music soughed of panic and upwardness, joyful through the streets with parrots painted all colors, reciting Italian arias, and a hen who had hundreds of golden eggs to the sound of a tambourine, and a trained monkey who read minds, and the multiple-use machine that could be used at the same time to sew on buttons, reduce fevers, and the apparatus to make person forget his bad memories, and a poultice to lose time. The thousand more inventions, so ingenious and unusual, Jose Arcadio Bonita must have wanted to invent a memory machine so that he could remember them all. In an instant, they transformed the village. The inhabitants of Macondo found themselves lost in their own streets, confused by the crowded fair, holding a child by each hand so as not to lose them, and the turmoil pumping into the acrobats with the gold-capped teeth and the jugglers with 6 arms, and suffocated by the mingled breath of manure and sandals that are crowded by the crowd exalt. Jose Ricardo Benito went about everywhere like a madman, looking for Maqueda so that he could reveal to him the infinite secrets of the fabulous nightmare. He asked several gypsies who did not understand his language. Finally, he reached the place where Maqueda used to set up his tent, and he found a taciturn Armenian who in Spanish was hawking a syrup to make oneself invisible. He had drunk down a glass of amber substance in one gulp. Jose Acuerdo Benito elbowed his way through the absorbed group, and that was witnessing the spectacle, and was able to ask his question. The gypsy wrapped him in the frightful climate of his look before he turned into a puddle of palatial and smoking pitch, over which the echo of his replay still floated. Maqueda is dead. Upset by the news, Jose Acuerdo Benito stood motionless, trying to rise above his affliction, until the group dispersed, called away by the other artifice. In the puddle of the taciturn Armenian evaporated completely. Other gypsies confirmed later on that Maqueda had in fact succumbed to the fever on the beach on the Singapore, and that his body had been thrown into the deepest part of the Java Sea. The children had no interest in the news. They insisted that their father take them to see the overwhelming novelty of the sages of Memphis that was being advertised in the entrance of the tent, that according to what was said had belonged to King Solomon. They insisted so much that Jose Acuerdo Benito paid the 30 reals and led them into the center of the tent, where there was a giant with a hairy torso and shaved head, with a copper ring in his nose and a heavy iron chain on his ankle, watching over a pirate chest. When it was opened by the giant, the chest gave off a glacial exhalation. Inside, there was only an enormous transparent block with infinite internal needles in which the light of the sunset was broken up into colored stars. Disconcerted, knowing that the children were waiting for an immediate explanation, Jose Acuerdo Benito ventured a murmur, "It's the largest diamond in the world. No gypsy countered, "It's ice." "No," the gypsy countered, "it's ice." Jose Benita, without understanding, stretched out his hand toward the cake, but the giant moved it away. "5 reals more to touch it," he said. Jose Benita paid them and put his hand on the ice and held it there for several minutes, as his heart filled with fear and jubilation at the contact with mystery. Without knowing what to say, he paid 10 reals more, so that his sons could know what to say. He paid 10 reals so that his sons could have the prodigious experience. Little Jose Accordio refused to touch refused to touch it. Ariano, on the other hand, took a step forward and put his hand on it, withdrawing it immediately. "It's boiling," he exclaimed, startled, but his father paid no attention to him. Intoxicated by the evidence of this miracle, he forgot at that moment about the frustration of his delicious undertakings, and Malquita's body, abandoned to the appetite of the squids, he paid for another 5 reals with his hand on the cake, as if he giving testimony on the Holy Scripture. He exclaimed, "This is a great invention. This is the great invention of our time." Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. That was chapter 1. I don't know why my nose is running. Hold on, I'll be right back. I'm done reading. Okay. Okay. No, I'm doing my stream right now. Ooh, your little hair is so like moisturized. Nara's gonna be calling me, but please don't, Nara, because you're gonna make the sound go out. Okay, so honestly, we can. I'm not against it. Everybody got different reading levels. Even if we're all like close to the same age, around the same age, everyone has different reading levels. So I read a little children's book, then I read a little novel, you know. I'm gonna head out. Thanks for hanging out with me this morning. I didn't talk to you. We're going to the gym. The pool party
was so awesome.
You heard it. The pool party was so awesome. I had fun. Friends came by. Parents came by. We got future parties to go to. We're going to go to Valley Fair this weekend. We got invited to that through the party I threw. We had plenty of pizza left over, so that's clutch. We got snacks, juice, all the stuff left over, so that's amazing. I thought the gym was closed today for kids, but it's open, so we're definitely about to go this morning. And I hope everyone's having a great day. I already did like my hygiene and everything. I love my little outfit today. These, if you want to catch what my little, I'm gonna do a little post though. But this is my outfit of the day. Got my little Lulu shorts. Okay, I have like a little Lulu sports bra underneath. And then this shirt is from Target for $5. Green is like my favorite color. Not this shade of green, but I like this shade of green on my body. And but yeah, I feel it's like a 90s color palette. I'm feeling the colorway that I'm wearing right now. And then we're about to go grab breakfast. I need a retwist. I washed my locks because I was in the pool yesterday. So right now it's like in a state of, do I do it myself or do I go get the people to do the right thing for me? I think I'm gonna go get the people to do the right thing for me. It's time to go see Shonda. And I really enjoyed the readings today. So from what I'm understanding, for the 100 Years of Solitude, it's about like literally a family tree, and like we're learning about like, this is like early before all, apparently the time period this book is based in is when everything didn't have a name yet. Everything was still kind of like being named. There was very few inventions. It's very much the beginning of a upcoming society, and it's like following along this family. And from what I'm getting is like this man, Jose, was a good father at one point, but something's happening, and he's like falling in love with these gypsies. Not them, but like every time they come to town, these gypsies just keep coming with new inventions, and he just keeps going nuts behind them, and he's willing to like abandon his family, like his values. He was the reason why like this whole society was like having like stability, and now he's like presenting unstable, and the community thinks he's being bewitched. And I'm believing it has something tied to these gypsies, because every time they come into town, he be losing his mind. It's crazy. And his wife is just trying to be like a good wife, standing beside him, and she's just reminding him of the kids. And there's like a part where he's like, he didn't realize his wife was so firm and like this family stuff. Like he thought he could just like snatch everybody up, like, we're leaving. And she's like, we ain't going nowhere. And he's just like, oh, she thinks. she has thoughts. Oh, it's not as easy as I thought. So, but it's like they're working together, but like he's very much like burning her inheritance down. Like she does, if everything she has had from her family she has given, and he has dwindled it completely. If gambling was a thing, this is a gambling mind. Okay, but because of Winn-Dixie, the first book that we read, that one was about a little girl who found a dog at the grocery store who was homeless, and she brought it home to her dad, the preacher, who lives in a trailer park, and her name's India Opal Baloney, and we're on chapter 2, and he just accepted that they're going to keep the dog in the house. So that's a summary of the books we just read this morning. We read chapter 1 of 100 Years of Solitude and chapter 2 of Because of Winn-Dixie. And then I think I'm going to start introducing Hello Habits into here, because this is something I really wanted to read. Kind of want to read it now. I kind of want to read it now. So cute. Like, isn't it such a peaceful color too? You're just like, what? I'm like really in love with my books right now. My goal is to read all the books on my shelf to you at some point, and then that way I could get a bigger shelf and then get more books. But I'm like, I keep getting more books, but I'm not finishing them all, you know? And let's see. I'll read you the introduction of Hello Habits, just so you guys can get the understanding why I'm like excited about this book. All right? Okay. And then we gotta go. Okay? All right? Because Nara's gonna be like, you said we can leave, and I'm like still reading to you. I always thought I had no talent. I could never continue to do something for an extended period, no matter what I tried, and I was unable to produce significant results in either my studies or sports. But since I started to study habits, I've changed my mind. It's not a major issue whether or not I have talent, because talent isn't something that's given to us. It's made as a result of continuation of habits. There is an author that I like by the name of Kiyoi Sakaguchi. His novels are written with combinations of words that are completely different from the other authors. He can write moving melodies on his guitar, and his illustrations rival those by contemporary artists. He has recently been making chairs and even knitting. No matter how you look at him, he appears gifted. But I heard that even this man had been told by his father, "You don't have talent, so give it up." While his brother would say, "You have just been lucky with you've been lucky with flukes from the number of attempts you've been making." There's a phrase that Sakaguchi repeats like a mantra. It isn't talent, it's continuing. I hear that even baseball star Ichiro and internationally best-selling author Haruki Murakami, and for that matter, anyone else who thrives in whatever it is they do generally don't acknowledge they are gifted. On the other hand, stories about gifted people captivate us. Dragon Ball, in which talent is awakened by anger. Slam Dunk, in which protagonist who has so far only been getting into fights suddenly shows off the magnificent jump. And Hollywood films like The Matrix, in which a chosen one all of a sudden becomes aware of his capabilities. When you live a real life for a while, you begin to realize that talent is somewhat different from those types of things. Look at the gifted individuals in the world. You'll see that they are all making proper efforts. There's a line that goes like this: genius is often only the power of making continuous efforts, by Albert Hubert. Okay, I get it. Perhaps genius refers to a person who can continue to make efforts. But then I thought, maybe I don't have the talent to continue to make efforts. My feeling now is that the words talent and effort are being used under a misconception. Talent isn't something given to us by the heavens, and effort doesn't mean work so strenuous that we have to grit our teeth. I think the concept of habits can bring talent and effort back to the normal people out there. There are not things that may only be achieved by a limited few, but there are things that we can all acquire depending on how we go about it. In brief, talent isn't something that you're giving, it's something that's created after you make an effort. These efforts can be maintained if you turn them into habits. The methods for these habits are something that you can learn. Writing previous work, goodbye, things, freed me from my inferiority, complete complex over money and possessions. And writing this book, in writing this book, I'm trying to relieve myself of complex over effort and talent. I think this is going to turn out to be the last self-help book for me. Let us begin our final preparations. How to read this book. The composition of this book is the same as when you acquire a habit. The beginning is the hardest part, so if you want to go quickly, learn the tips. Tips for making things a habit. You can go ahead and read just chapter 3. In chapter 1, we consider the issue of willpower. It often happens when we want to acquire some type of habit, but end up being unable to preserve. And we often say, I have a weak will. I will consider what exactly this willpower is that we express as being strong or weak. In chapter 2, I look at what habits are, as well as the issue of awareness. This is because I consider habits to be actions that we take without much thought. In other words, they are actions that we take without calling up our awareness, which we believe to be our mind. In chapter 3, I explain the stages in stages, the steps for actually acquiring habits, breaking them down into 50 parts. These are the points that will serve as references when you start or quit doing something. While there are many books on habits, my intention has been to compile their essence in a single book. In chapter 4, I rewrite the meanings of the words talent, effort, and to capture what has become clear to me by studying habits and expanded possibilities of habits and have witnessed by putting them into practice. Habits are not only effective for achieving objectives, I feel that they have deeper meaning. Okay, that was just the intro to Hello Habits, right? I'm excited. I like this series. I love skincare, I love beauty, but reading is also self-care, and it's actually helping me. It's actually helping me a lot, believe it or not, to like just read more on purpose. And I feel like it's a quality way for us to spend time with each other. And let me pick up my glasses because that's so disrespectful. They dropped and I did not go for them. Ooh. That's probably how I keep losing them. But yeah, so now we're about to go to the gym. Nani's gonna go play. I'm gonna go work out. I've been doing it, y'all. I've been doing it. I think today's like day 4 or day 5 of me going to the gym on purpose. I couldn't go this weekend because they don't have the kids portion open over the weekends, so I can only work out Monday through Friday. Oh no. So it's, you know, gotta do what I can do. I mean, I could work out from home, there's that, but I do walk outside. So we're gonna go to the gym and then we're gonna go for a little walkie walk. She doesn't want to go for a walk, but I want to go for a walk. So we're gonna do some stuff. Okay, hope you guys have a great day. Don't let anyone stress you, you know. Have a great day, great time, great fun. My name is Cimonealise. You can call me Cici, C-I-C-I, capital C's on me. Please and thank you when you spell my name, okay? I do live streams daily on self-care, beauty, and more. Today was reading, that was the more. And I'm a licensed esthetician, massage therapist, and more, you know? Mommy and more. and I enjoy pampering myself and spending time with others in a peaceful way. And this is my peaceful place where we discuss and do peaceful things, and we just kiki and hang out and chat with each other. And this is my chat, and I'm so grateful to have them. Thank you to my moderators who are here today, Kaysel and Denzel, Kenny, and I think just Denzel's Denzel, and anyone else who is here helping to make sure the chat stays clean as possible when I'm not looking. I appreciate all your efforts. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, share if you care, and hit the notification bell so you never miss my stream. Until next time, I'll see you guys later on today. I'll chat with you guys when I come back from the gym because I gotta eat something clean. What am I gonna eat? Who knows? We'll see soon, okay? Love you, bye-bye. Kiss!